Right, hey guys, welcome to the Hollywood News Podcast. This is your host Santi, along with my fellow host Dave. How are you, Dave?
I'm good, Santi. How is everybody?
I'm doing all right, man. Tonight we have a fantastic guest, um, Mr. Jim Torgson. Is it Torgson? Is it Torgson?
Torgeson.
Torgeson. Okay.
That is the
Mr.
American pronunciation. So yeah.
So, Mr. Jim Torgson from a band called Virgin, China, if I'm not mistaken, and only are those two your bands or were you
Yes.
on? Okay, okay. Um, so welcome to the show.
It's happy to be here.
I mean,
Should be
it's
fun.
great. It's great to have you here. Um, it's been quite a few weeks since we recorded, so we just gotta get our rust
Yeah, we
off
got
a
to get
bit.
back. We got to get back in our groove here.
Yeah, I had a baby 8 months ago, so ever
Congrats.
since yeah, thank you. So ever since she was born, I mean, everything's so busy that we just can't record. So every chance I get to do one of these, it's very much appreciated.
Well, you'll find kids, especially daughters, uh,
Hmm.
they change a lot of perspectives, and you kind of you grow in ways, and you become empathetic in other ways that you never would have thought of. But once
Yeah,
you've
for
got a
sure.
baby girl, it's like, okay, I have to provide, I have to do this, I have to, you know, do it
Yeah,
right, and you
yeah.
don't get second chances, so you do it right.
And you start being more careful with a lot of things as well.
Yeah. See,
Obviously,
I had it easy. I had two boys, and they're 20 and 18 now, so I did my job, I think.
Yeah.
you're not up the hook yet.
My son's 28, so it's kind of like,
Okay.
wow, and my daughter's, he's doing exceptionally well. My daughter is actually a professional ballet dancer.
Oh,
Oh wow, very
Yeah,
cool.
so I did it right, but that was definitely something when you find yourself responsible, and this, Dave, you don't get second chances. You want to do it right from the beginning.
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
No,
My
totally.
my oldest climbs mountains, and my youngest is working on his second rap album. I don't know how I ever raised a rapper, but it happened.
I'm sorry to hear that. I do have a, a lime pit outside of Quartzsite, Arizona, if you need it.
Well, let's see how this goes. If he can help Dad out financially, I'll be all right.
There you go.
So, Jim, were you originally from California, or did
Yep,
you
I
move
grew up
there?
in Glendale, California, which is adjacent to Los Angeles, Hollywood, Burbank, Pasadena. So born right in
Hmm.
the middle of it. And in fact, my parents uh, both lived in Hollywood. When they were younger. Uh, it was, in fact, my
Right.
mom was like Ronald Reagan's neighbor. It was kind of weird.
Oh wow.
Oh. So did you take into music from a young age, or how did
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I first picked up guitar when I was probably 8 or 10 or something. And then I got
Hmm.
serious with it when I was about 14, 13, something like that. But yeah, music was something that was always around, and I loved it. I mean, I'm in elementary school listening to Mott the Hoople and David Bowie, and uh, just into it. And by the time sixth grade rolls around, it's like Aerosmith. They're the best. We argue who's better, Aerosmith or Queen. You have to have that back of the bus argument.
Yeah. So you were basically right at the right time, at the right moment, and the right place at the right time, I guess.
Absolutely,
You
absolutely.
saw it happen from the beginning.
There will be nothing like that scene ever again. And it was
Yeah.
I was lucky to be born at right there, and uh, have friends that were in bands when I was too young to drive, and be able to go to the Whiskey and the Roxy and the Starwood and things like that, and meet people that you're in Ohio, you don't get to meet those people, right? Because
No.
there's not that big a scene there. So you know people think maybe you're dropping a name or you're doing whatever. Well, the fact of the matter is that everybody we were all in that melting pot together, and lucky enough to come across people that are, some of them are legends, some of them are forgotten, but it was a scene that will never ever happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up a huge fan of the music, and being in Ohio and seeing, like, my only connection really was MTV, and like you said, a lot of the musicians here in Cleveland were going to LA and trying to make it out there. So we did have a little scene. So I kind of get how, like, you look up to certain people because certain people were maybe at a higher level as far
Right.
as popularity goes, but everybody was still kind of playing together, and everybody was sharing the stages, and, and it was just, I couldn't even imagine walking down, the strip on those nights, but hearing everybody's stories, it's amazing to kind of live it through their eyes.
Yeah, and you got people like Janie Lane came from Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right by me, actually. Yeah,
right. And obviously he left a mark. And,
mm-hmm.
He was a hell of a nice guy, actually. I mean, at least I encountered him constantly. Or the guys from Poison.
Yeah, they were from PA.
And humble beginnings. I mean, there were some of those guys that running water was almost a challenge, I think, for their grandparents and stuff. So it was, they came a long way, and when they drove into Hollywood, it was literally they drove into the center of Gay Pride Day parade. Like their car got stuck in the center of it. They didn't know what they got off on the freeway to. Wow. So people came from all across the country.
And how did you guys react to that? Seeing artists from like other parts of the country coming into your town and trying to get a piece of what you guys were building. Did that bother you at all, or was
Not at all? Not at all. It was kind of exciting to see stuff. I mean, I was at Poison's first gig in I think it was Madam Wong's West, and Kelly Nichols moved out here with a band called Scarlet. Oh, I can't remember the name now, but obviously he was in LA Guns after that. And Kelly's one of the coolest guys in rock. I mean, he was just super cool. And I don't think there was ever a thought of, well, you weren't born here. There was community. I mean, there was rivalry, but I don't think it was rivalry like territory like that. It was, based around other things, whether it's girls or, who's drawing more or whatever. But
I could see girls being a big part of it.
Yeah, there was some interesting things regarding that for sure.
Yeah, I could imagine.
So when did you first started like going to Hollywood and being part of the scene that was growing there?
Exact date I don't recall, but let's call it 14. I was I worked in a guitar store at 14. And so the manager of the store and his roommate would take me down to Hollywood to see bands at the Starwood and stuff like that. And, it was just cool. Like I had a couple guys that were like, let's say 5 years older than me or so, take me under their wing and, all right, we're going to go see London, or we're going to go see, whatever. And there was something about it that just drew you in. I mean, it was the scene. It was comfortable. It was fun. It was reckless. Everything, basically a 14-year-old boy wants to be, right?
Yeah. We actually had Rick Fox last week on the show from Steve. Did you catch one of his shows back at the?
I came across Rick a bunch of times. Yeah.
Yeah. He has
Rick was a little older than us. He came from New York. As I recall, he came to join, I'm going to say Steeler. I can't remember.
He wasn't. Yeah, it was Steeler.
He first joined Wasp for a couple of minutes. And then
well, maybe a rehearsal. Yeah. But he came out, did that, and Steeler and whatever. And, he was cool. He was older than the rest of us,
Mm.
or at least from my era. I mean, obviously, he wasn't
Right.
older than nobody's older than Mick Mars, but yeah, yeah. It was he had something. In fact, he was in a band apparently in New York called Virgin, which I thought
Oh,
was pretty interesting. I found that out many years later.
nice, nice. So what do you that early era, I guess, or that early from those early days from the in Hollywood? How different was the scene at that time in comparison to what it will become by the end of the decade? Was it a different kind of thing, or?
Um, I don't know if by the end of the '80s, it was definitely there was more of a formula people were trying to follow. It wasn't as organic. It wasn't as angst driven.
Mm.
You know, and then by the early '90s, it had turned into they were trying to benefit from Seattle. Um, you go see when I would see Motley Crue as let's say it's probably I'm going to say 16. Um, it was nothing but cool, right? Motley Crue was just the coolest thing ever. But there was nothing, as you went through it, Motley Crue, your next wave of things from Motley Crue and Rat would be Poison and Guns N' Roses, and then it did tend to pretty much peter out after that. The scene stayed very vibrant as far as people going out, people seeing bands, but it did get a little derivative after that, and
Right.
people started trying to be Motley Crue, trying to be Guns N' Roses, trying to be Poison, and it sadly it lost its cool. There were some great bands in there, and there were some great bands. There's one band I swear I can't remember the name of, and these guys were so cool. It was I can picture them in my mind to this day, and they were just beasts. But I can't remember the name of the band now, and it kills me because I would love to find something from them. They were
Hmm.
just animals up there.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of bands that only recorded a few demos and that float
Yeah.
online, and you can find them from time to time, but there's never been officially released, I guess, and it's such a shame because there's some great music out there. Uh, when I first got into this music, I started like scouring the internet for all the demos that I could find, right? And I found some pretty cool stuff that I wish somebody would put out. Every time I interview a band that never got their stuff released, I will say the same thing. When are we gonna get the official songs out? And I know it's not that easy, but I
But
always push. I always try to push for it, and
those
Yeah.
bands that slipped through the cracks for whatever reason that
Mm.
didn't get a release or even any notoriety. There was a band I remember seeing them, and I couldn't have been more than 15 tops. There's a band called Stormer, and
Mhm.
the guitar player was amazing. Nothing ever happened though. I mean,
Right.
he was Edward Van Halen level amazing. Nothing happened.
Wow.
And there's
Yeah, and
guys. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's kind of a shame that like there's so much talent that just kind of got lost in all that, and then once a band, once somebody gets popular or whatever, and it catches on,
Hmm.
then a lot of bands are gonna change what they originally wanted to do to get to that next level. And I think that's what you were talking about earlier, where you mentioned where a lot of bands just started to sound like the next
Previous
popular
band.
thing.
Yeah, and there was a guy, Greg Leon, and he was portrayed pretty poorly in The Dirt. He tried to do something with Motley Crue before it was Motley Crue, and
Mhm.
Greg was an amazing player, and he was a guy that could write, that could sing, that could play. It just didn't that scene didn't click for him. but he was great. He was in Dokken for a little bit. I think he was in Rat for a little bit. And he's still out there playing. I mean, he's, releasing some albums here and there. I don't know what the sales are, but I remember he'd come into the guitar store I worked at, and I'd go see him, and I was just floored how good this guy was. And it was like, he was that good. And just nothing clicked for him. It just, the chemistry wasn't there. All these bands, there has to be a chemistry. And if you look at any band, very rarely, if there's a major component of that band changed out, very rarely are they as good as they were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about it, even to some massive bands, like the few that violated that are like Black Sabbath and Van Halen, maybe, stayed with their status or increased somehow. But you go to other bands and you take the guitar player out, you take the singer out, and it's just not there anymore. It's chemistry. Skid Row, the chemistry with Sebastian Bach's there. I don't think they've really done, they still sell tickets and that kind of thing, and they're still great. I mean, those guys can play like nobody's business, but it just didn't have that weird chemistry. Aerosmith without Joe Perry is not Aerosmith.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some bands. I mean, when Bon Jovi lost Richie Sambora, I think the same thing happened, right? They lost that key component that made the Bon Jovi sound like they're supposed to sound, right?
Yeah, it was a big deal. But I think the big thing was when John Corabi came into Motley Crue. That was not necessarily, it wasn't bad. That album is actually very good.
Yeah.
But nobody wanted to give it a chance. And
John's a great guy. I mean, I know
amazing singer.
John fairly well. I talked to him once in a blue moon. And when Virgin and Ricky parted ways, we tried to pull John in because John his voice is just awesome. Yeah, and it didn't happen because the band he was in had a production deal with, I want to say Warner Brothers. Somebody was looking at them pretty seriously, and he was with some friends, and they all came from Philadelphia, and it was a great band that he was in. But I wanted to steal him, didn't get to steal him, didn't work out. But John, I mean that weird, whatever that chemistry is with Vince Neil was more workable than it was with John.
Yep, and like I said, man, that's actually a really good record. There's a lot of good songs on that.
And you ought to hear John John sing "Seasons of Wither" by Aerosmith. Man, what a beast!
Oh man, that's such a great song too.
Oh yeah. And what people don't realize is he's actually a pretty good guitar player.
Yeah,
I mean, he's good.
Yeah, he played. Well, he played some guitar when he was with the Scream, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and his Angora stuff is pretty good, and that's a band I wish they put out some music as well. Yeah.
Angora or Raggedy Ann, I think they also called themselves something like that, and great band. They used to live down the hall from me, and it was they were a great band, no question about it.
Yeah. So how did you get your band together?
I mean, we'll restrict it down to the two you're talking about. I found this drummer, Steve Bentley, in Woodland Hills. I mean, somebody had recommended I check this kid out. He lied about his age. He was younger than I thought. But he was very, and I don't want to say moldable because that's not fair to Steve, but he understood when I said I want something to fit the song. It's not to highlight anybody. No, superfluous guitar stuff. No, unnecessary drum fills. I mean, approach it like Shout at the Devil or Back in Black. And Steve would hit so hard. There were these Duralast or something. There were fiberglass drum heads that weren't supposed to break. He could break them. He could break, the ring on a snare. He was just unbelievably strong in the way he hit. And it immediately coalesced what I wanted to do. And I found this guy, Clark, had auditioned for a friend of mine for a band, Creature. And they didn't feel that the mix was right. But I saw lightning in a bottle. Clark James was an absolute star, phenomenal star. It didn't mean he was the best singer, but he was definitely commanded a stage, and he fit the vibe. And it was very, very much meant to be a punk fueled hard rock band. And we brought a friend of ours, Corey, in from a band called Actress, and there was chemistry there. But unfortunately, that band, I mean, in the end, it was drugs that killed it. We were talking to a couple labels. We were like ready to go, and drugs are what finished the band.
And what year was that when you were doing
86-ish, 87, somewhere in that range.
Oh, okay.
I think we played our first gig like in 85, so let's call it late 86. I can't remember exactly when it fell apart. It's not like I put that date on my calendar. It wasn't a date I wanted to remember. But Clark was lightning in a bottle. He was awesome, and that was chemistry there. And when Steve and I talk, it's definitely one of those things that you go back. What if? Not that I mind where I am in life. I love where I am in life right now. But man, Clark was all cool all the time. And unfortunately, Clark is no longer with us, and Corey's no longer with us, and it has to do with bad habits, and it's a shame because it was fun. And you're young enough. It's like a gang. It's 4 guys, your family. You're doing it, and it was great. I loved every minute of being in that band. I loved every minute of it, and it killed me when it fell apart. I don't know what to say. It had to do with drugs.
That's
I
mean, it's a sad thing that we hear so much, right, with bands from back then. There's being close, but I don't know, in the end, self-destructing like that because of addiction, right? And
And the sad thing is, for me, I wasn't drinking or doing drugs, and I had a much different background, a much different feel for things. And to look back, part of it was my intolerance, my attitude about being screwed up. Had I the band would have lasted longer had my attitude not as been as pious about it. So when people remember back to them, what most people don't remember is I remember everything because I was dead sober. Was.
Right.
You're sober. Everybody else is drunk, so their girlfriend is available. So
So did you manage to record any demos?
yeah. See, China has probably 4 or 5 songs somewhere. A lot of them are on YouTube. I found that, and then I put a couple up, and then China or Virgin, I think we recorded with Riki because that's the important era version. After that, it was not important. We recorded 5 songs. Virgin Music wanted to use 4 of them, and some of those are out there. Again, and unfortunately, the masters to that all went up in a fire.
Oh.
And I was moving, and I had used not only my truck and whatever, but I put him in the trunk of my dad's Cadillac, and he said he'd take it out and put it in for safekeeping, and he got rear-ended and it caught fire, and
oh no,
almost everything I have from 1984 to 1990, let's call it, went up in flames.
Oh wow.
So it's kind of sad as far as that goes.
Yeah. I guess. So do you remember your first gig, the first time you played live?
Yeah, not my most proud moment.
There's a story, right?
No, it was just, you sit there and you start to look at your shoes a little bit because you realize that you're standing there in front of, a couple hundred people, and they're looking at you like, with their arms crossed, I can play better than that. I can play faster than that. I mean, everybody's got an attitude. And so it wasn't the greatest moment of my career, but uh, the first gigs for China or Virgin, relatively good. China, our first gig was opening for, of all things, Grim Reaper. It was totally not a great mix. Uh, and I think the only this sounds insane. The only thing that saved that was there was a kid giving me real grief from the front of the stage. He was right in front of the stage, and there's 1,000 people there, whatever, sold out the country club. And he was spitting at me. So I told him to chill out for a second. He spit at me, and I kicked him in the face, and people liked that. So it was
there
like,
you go.
Okay, so the gig isn't that bad today. People remember what they saw; they didn't remember what they heard because we sounded terrible. But it was a good memory.
That was metal. There you go.
Yeah. That was definitely a more punk moment right there. Let's face it.
Right?
Oh yeah, I could imagine.
And then with Virgin, I mean, the first couple times we played, we weren't even playing real gigs. Like Riki had a party at. I met him through Bob Dahl. Riki had a party at the Central, which is now the Viper Zone, the Viper Room, which I think they just tore down, and introduced us because China was done. And so we played, I'm going to say we played New Year's Eve there, like a couple songs. And then we played, I remember it was the first gig that we did that we didn't want people to know. We wanted to try some new material, and we were a new band. And we played a place called Madam Wong's West, like on a Tuesday night. Nobody was going to be there, right? And the guys booking it were Gilby Clarke and Jonathan Daniel. Jonathan and Gilby were in Candy and had stuff after that. In fact, Jonathan is a huge manager these days. I mean, Godsmack, everything. He's a big deal. Smart guy. We both went to UCLA, so it was kind of a weird mix to be in college and be in a rock band. And we'd agreed we'd tell nobody. We just wanted to kind of make sure that any mistakes, anything awkward was worked out almost in rehearsal. Like it was just nobody would know. And we're sitting in the dressing room, and Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee walk in, and I'm looking up, and I look over at Riki. I go, "So you didn't tell anybody?" And he's like, "Oh, maybe I told these guys." And I was like, "Oh man," right? And it was it was a horrible gig because the bass player at the time was very he drank a bunch before we went on. I swear he played the wrong song for every song. Like it was just bizarre. And and so I remember Sixx saying, "Hey, at least you got out in front of nobody," right? And it's like, yeah, that was a good one. But the best part of that night was I was working at a place called Guitars R Us, and I needed a spare guitar, right? Like a backup guitar. And Howie loaned me like a 72 Les Paul Custom, right? And it was one that was in the shop I played all the time. He's like, "Well, I'll just take this with you. Make sure you got it, a second or third guitar, whatever it was." And we're sitting in the dressing room, and it's missing. The case is gone. The guitar is gone. And so I realized somebody's stolen the guitar. So I'm running all over this club. And then I'm at the end of the hall, and I can see the case as it's walking out the door. And it walks out, and the guy bumps into Nikki Sixx. And Nikki's looking for my guitar, right? And I get out there, and I see the guitar. He goes, "Oh, I made a mistake." And Sixx, probably being smart because he was not particularly screwed up at that moment. Instead of like doing anything, he's just like, "Kick his ass, kick his ass, kick." He's like trying to get me to beat the guy up. It was like, "No, I want the guitar back. That's what I want." And I grabbed the guitar and just sloughed the guy off. But it was a fun memory. It's one of those things you remember, like, Nikki trying to encourage me to beat this guy's ass, which he did a couple times over the years, and I thought was funny. But it was a great memory. It was a horrible gig, but a great memory. And then we played the Whiskey like a week later, and it was a fantastic gig. Loved every minute of it. And every gig we did from there on out on the Strip was sold out easily. We'd do 2 nights, 3 nights, and they'd sell out. Wasn't an issue. They'd oversell the room.
Wow.
So had a great time.
And you guys were headlining at the time?
Yes. We headlined our first show between China being the draw it was, and then Riki having a name for his club. There was no question we would be headlining from the first gig out. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So which venue was your favorite to
The
play
whiskey,
at? Yeah.
hands down, the whiskey. I enjoyed the Roxy. I enjoyed the Country Club. I think I enjoyed just about every club I ever played. But the whiskey had this just rock and roll feel to it that nothing else had, and I just absolutely loved playing that room. I'm sure it's not quite the same as a player today, but
Right.
I mean the room's ostensibly the same. I was just there a couple months ago, but man, I just loved it. The sound was right, the feel was right, and it was a blast.
Yeah, I when I look at videos from the whiskey,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember as a kid thinking the whiskey would be like, like Madison Square Garden or something. And
No,
when I see videos now, it looks rather small. And then one of my good friends out here is Danny Kane, who played guitar in New Haven and Legs Up. And he was telling me he said all those stages out there are really small. And that
well,
really that
the
kind of
the
surprises
stage
me.
wasn't huge. The legal capacity of it was 450 or 500, something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, but legal and what we'd put in the room are two entirely different things. I mean, there was, I remember looking at one night, like up at the Roxy, which is the same size room. Uh, we were doing a door split, and there was, oh, you've got too many guests in here. We put 200 guests in the room. I'm like, wow, okay, that's stout. How many tickets were sold? Well, we sold 880 tickets.
Wow.
Well, when you put over 1,000 people in this room, I mean, probably a little less because maybe people left or whatever, opening bands or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You put 1,000 people through a room in a night. Wow, that was something. And yeah, those rooms were never the the fire code was never respected ever in those rooms, not even close.
Wow.
I
I
mean,
couldn't imagine you couldn't move in there.
no, no. I remember going to see Motley Crue. They played two shows a night for 3 nights at the Whiskey, and the line was up the street. I mean, just all the way up the street. I don't even know how they did it, and
Wow.
I don't remember the numbers, but I'm sure it was. I mean, 800 or 1,000 people in there, and it was you were there. You were touching people. You were a sardine. It was great.
Yeah, 2 shows a night sounds insane. Actually, having the stamina, just the sheer stamina. Well, I mean, I guess when you're putting that all that stuff through your body, you can get.
I mean, you
But
get a little jacked
yeah,
up, and I mean, and I don't think for the band itself it was much of a challenge. I think for a singer it's more of a challenge because
yeah,
we'd rehearsed for 4 hours, right? But I mean, a singer having to do his job and maybe not be the greatest singer in the world, challenging his vocal cords the whole time, that could get a little rough. Doing 6 shows over 3 days, it could get a little
yeah.
rough.
Oof.
Not everybody's David Coverdale. You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, so did you partake in the whole flyerings wars
Oh
and
yeah.
all
Oh yeah.
that?
Watch those VH1s things. It's funny because you see my poster get covered up by a Poison poster, and it's like, thanks, Bob. Good job, right? Um, the Yeah, I mean, and it was the flyer thing was really funny because CC DeVille's parents owned a print shop.
Damn.
So
Right.
basically, most bands ended up buying from CC's print shop or his parents' print shop. And the funny thing was all the colors. Sometimes you just get these really ugly colors because they got a deal on the flyer paper. But yeah, and putting together flyers. And back in the old days, you're pasting things together and you're trying to get, if you've got the extra 10-15 bucks, you're trying to get a halftone for it instead of copying an actual picture that was printed out. And it's cut and paste, literally cut and paste. And it was fun. I mean, you went out there and you're handing out flyers and you feel like you're invincible, you're immortal. My band's playing, the Roxy tomorrow. Come and see us, and you feel like you're a stud. It was
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. I mean, you're in the right in the middle of the place to be for that, and you got your picture uh, on a flyer. You're gonna play the rocks. I mean, yeah, yeah. How could you not feel like you're on top of the world?
Right. Like you're following in the footsteps of these giants, right? And those people would be at these clubs when they were in town. You know, whether it was the Whiskey or the Roxy or the Rainbow or whatever, you know, all the guys that came before you would be showing up there. I mean, there'd be David Lee Roth hanging out at the Troubadour or hanging out at the Rainbow or whatever. And so you felt like you were included in this dream, you know, this incredible scene. So it was you couldn't wait to go. You know, I mean, Friday night, oh, there's a cool gig on a Tuesday, I'm going. It was really one of those things. And you'd go onto the Strip and there'd be thousands of people hanging outside of these clubs. It was, I mean, it was amazing. And until the very late 80s, where the sheriffs started bringing horses in and breaking it up, it was wall-to-wall people outside. And the Rainbow parking lot at 2 a.m. was packed with people. It was like the last place to try and hook up. It was quite a place.
Yeah, you know, it's awesome when I look back at being a kid here in Ohio, seeing all the bands, seeing MTV, Riki Ratchman, all that stuff, the whole scene. I mean, we all knew it. We all knew what was going on. Never did I imagine that it would end so quickly and just so suddenly, like where it was just like gone.
Right.
And
it just stopped dead in its tracks. Yeah.
And that's crazy.
Right. And Riki, you know, God bless him. And the guy's still got a career. Right. And he just did a spoken word tour, you know, across the country. And I'm sure he'll do it again. And I went and saw him here, you know, just to catch up and whatever. It was great. You know, just some of the things that he remembered that he didn't remember. And some of his stories that went well into the 90s with Pantera and stuff like that. It was great hearing those stories. I sat there for a couple hours. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. I was laughing my butt off.
Yeah, he did a show here, and I missed it when he was here. But hopefully he'll do another one, and he'll come back around.
I think he'll do another one. I know he's doing one in Charlotte, North Carolina soon. There's only 26 tickets left. If you want one, go buy it. But he's got stories, and there were things about him that I didn't know that when we were playing together that gave me a further appreciation, because he really does love music. I mean, he may not have been David Coverdale, but that man loves his music, and he's much more rounded in music than you would think, as far as his appreciation of it. He even had us cover a Blondie song and a Prince song while we were playing together. And you wouldn't think that would, and of all things, sounds the funniest thing ever, The Wanderer. Now, as memory serves me, it was his uncle or his godfather or something was the guy that recorded it initially. But we'd play this song in an encore and bring up the horn section of a band called the Anchemimes. And I got to tell you, it was just a blast. You're sitting there playing simple 3-chord rock and having the best time with these guys playing saxophones and whatever. And it was just a blast. It was silly. It was a party, but it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds like it for sure. So speaking of Riki, they mentioned that people always tell us that there was like a strife between the Cat House crowd and the Strip crowd.
No, I don't think there was any riff of that. I mean, I could be wrong. I never really noticed it. Maybe that's because I was kind of like breached the two for a while.
Right.
But I didn't really think of that. And Cat House really, it was every Tuesday night. And so what he basically did is he took over a club called a gay club called the Probe. And every Tuesday it was a rock and roll club. It started out at a place called Odyssey, which was a dance club, and Odyssey closed and he moved it over to the Probe on Highland. And It was always packed. It was always packed. I swear I never went there once and didn't have a great time. Did some stupid stuff that I don't wish to recall at the moment. But he knew how to make sure people enjoyed themselves, and he knew when to cut that DJ loose with whatever he wanted to do to keep the vibe in that room rolling. And it was simply, you wanted, it was rock and roll. It was Mud Wrestlers. It was Motley Crue. It was whatever you had going at the moment. And he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't know. I mean, I knew of the Odyssey, and I knew there was a shady history to that place.
Yes.
And I never knew that became the Cat House. I didn't know that.
Yeah, just on Tuesdays. And then they left there. He and Tammy moved it over to the Probe on Highland, and it stayed there for a long time, a very long time. And it was fun. I mean, it was just flat out fun. I mean, I enjoyed it when it was at the Odyssey, but I had more fun when it was at the Probe.
Oh, that is a little interesting fact about the Cat House that I did not know. Pretty cool.
Hey, it's fun.
So
go buy a shirt from him. He's putting them on sale for Christmas.
I do have my Cat House shirt. I do have one. I could go and find it, but
yeah. So when the whole thing started to fade out by 1991, how was it from the inside? Do you think the oversaturation of bands on one hand, and the other hand, the Seattle bands marching in, do you think that was a big factor, or maybe there was something else that?
No, that was a big factor. I mean, I can remember, that Virgin carried on without Riki, and it took a long time to get somebody that we wanted, somebody that could really have a voice. And we got a guy that really could sing very well, but the chemistry was wrong. And nobody in the band liked him after a while. I mean, you just wanted rid of him. And again, that was probably to do with some substance. I don't, the guys, I won't even talk to the guy. But I remember that the last gig we played, and it sounds strange, was December 23rd, 1991. And the bass player walks up to me on stage because the singer was throwing a fit on stage like a child. And he says, "Are you going to kick his ass?" And I looked and I said, "No, I'm cutting the set short." Who is now my wife was in the audience standing next to his girlfriend, and his girlfriend looked at my girlfriend, is Jim going to hit him? And she's like, "I can't guarantee he won't," right? Because I was really tempted just to knock him out on the stage. And that was it. I was done. Things were becoming derivative. By that point, I think the stuff we were writing was derivative. That I was writing was derivative. I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling that same thing. And I was looked at what was coming up, the Nirvanas of the world, stuff like that, and that wasn't something I identified with. And I think that one of the things that fueled that whole scene, let's face it, one of the things that fueled the Sunset Strip scene was sex. Just was. And AIDS was not exactly something that was enticing at the time. And whether there's misinformation or whatever you want to, it's a dampener. And a generation of kids had come up where that wasn't part of their thought process. And the party was more misery. And people were doing heavier drugs more often. And it just wasn't as fun. And you listen to things that, there's a big difference between Take Me to the Top by Motley Crue and anything on the first Nirvana album. I mean, the vibe, it wasn't, I'm invincible, I'm taking over the world. It wasn't girls, 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 or it wasn't whatever. It was not as fun a situation. And being at that point, let's say 27 or something. No, I didn't identify. I wasn't going to sit there and try and emulate something else. If I couldn't do something right, I wasn't going to do it. And I immediately got into promoting shows. I mean, like immediately. And there were still bands that you would book that weren't as, they were hanging on, but it wasn't, you weren't seeing these bands that had it. I mean, occasionally you'd see something there and it would disappear. But you had people trying to hold on to being the next Warrant, or you had people that were trying to act like they were from Seattle and let me throw on literally let me wear a plaid flannel shirt. And, hey, dude, you grew up in Burbank, California. Give me a break, right? But it was derivative of a scene that we weren't even part of at that point. So the luster of it faded, and
Right.
the world was ready. The record buying public was ready for something darker. Let's call it darker.
And that's what it was.
Yeah, and it just wasn't there. And I mean, for me to write songs like "Love and Cold Blood" or whatever I had written, nobody was going to listen to it. It's not what they wanted. They wanted to hear Rage Against the Machine.
Right.
They didn't want to hear Virgin at that point. Not that we even held a candle to them in that respect, but you understand what I'm saying.
No, yeah, for sure. It's funny how nowadays we've gone full circle, and the '80s are cool again, I guess, with all the revival stuff and.
Well, who would think that Motley Crue, the youngest guy in the band is 61, right? That's the youngest guy in the band. They're out there doing it, and they're selling out stadiums. And Def Leppard, I mean, I remember being, I'm going to say I don't even think I could drive yet. If I recall right, my friend Larry stole his dad's Oldsmobile, and we put in and I had a portable cassette deck because his car didn't have a cassette in it. And I put in Def Leppard's first album, and we were playing it to go to Guitar Center because Guitar Center had something that my store didn't have, and my store was closed on Sundays, right? And we drove down into Hollywood listening to that. And they were young at the time, but they were still older than we were. And they've got to be in there. The youngest guy in the band there has to easily be 60-something.
Oh, yeah, easily, yeah.
And a new set of kids are going and watching it. My daughter went to see the stadium tour last summer in Boston because she's a ballet dancer back east. And so Bob gave me 2 tickets for her and her girlfriend to see. And they were like, they thought Poison was the best of all 3 bands, right? That was the first thing. I said, why? And they go, well, they didn't sound fake. And they seemed like they were still having fun. And I said,
a lot of energy. Yep. A lot of energy.
What about Def Leppard? They sounded like an album, and almost like they're lip syncing. Like, what about Motley Crue? The singer sucks. We walked out, right? That kind of thing. And but my daughter thinks, she listens to Motley Crue, or she listens to a Def Leppard or a Poison. She loves it. I actually know I did something right because my daughter likes Deep Purple. So she's 22 and she likes Deep Purple.
Nice. Yeah, I went to see Def Leppard and Motley Crue in February this year, and I was surprised as well. I mean, I was surrounded by teenagers, and they were all screaming lyrics to each Def Leppard song. I mean, there was two. I don't know. They must have been 15-year-old.
Yeah. Can you excuse me for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we should be wrapping up anyways in a few minutes.
I need to you edit all this out, so I need to get I want to get a couple of those ring lights.
Yeah, light rings. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna probably order a couple of those, and with this camera now, which I think is a lot better than the one that's in the
computer. It is a lot. I can see what's inside your frame back there.
You see it a little better with that camera.
Yeah. There's a lot.
This ain't even my good camera. This is the first one me and Danny bought.
The Chinese one.
Yeah, the one. Yeah, it's called a. It is a. What is it called? Digital video camera. It's a DVC. That's the brand name. Digital video
The
camera.
DVC, the video camera.
Yeah, I'm like whatever. It works for this though. It's cool. I don't look all like. Now you're brighter. Did you change the lights in that room?
No, it's the same lights. I don't know.
It seems like really bright.
Well, yeah, yeah.
And mine just it's because I have a little lamp here. I have my big lamp there. I have another little lamp here.
I have my
I don't have great lighting in here at all. So I may have to invest.
I'm sorry. So where were we, sir?
No worries. In any case, we should start to wrap it up. We are past the hour mark, so but I guess we were talking about how Def Leppard, all these older bands that are coming back and younger people are listening to them. I was just saying how there was a lot of young teenagers at the Def Leppard show, and they all knew the lyrics. They were screaming the songs out. It's fantastic. I mean, I was kind of surprised as well. And yeah, I totally agree that Def Leppard sounds exactly like the album. It almost makes you wonder if if they're actually playing or not.
There's definitely something going on there, but
yeah,
I feel
I'm sure there is. But
I've seen the soundboard. I know there's something going on there.
I'm sure there is, but I don't complain. I mean, I pay when you pay such steep prices for something you want to hear something that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to hear the album, right?
Right.
And hopefully you get to see a performance that matches that up. I mean, I'm not advocating lip syncing, but I definitely understand. People want the best product, and that there's a demand and there's a balance to what people are willing to accept and what they deserve to get for what they're paying. I mean, I don't think many people go, well, I'm going to lower the price $20 because I suck. I mean, people don't do that, right?
Not going to happen.
Right. But I mean, one thing you will see, and I'm going to go see it in April. The Tom Kiefer's out there with the Tom Kiefer band, because he won't do Cinderella without Jeff LaBar. It's just a brotherhood thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that Eric actually plays bass for him, or did for a while. But Tom Kiefer bands goes out there, and LA Guns are going to support him, right? And to me, I mean, that's going to be a fun show. I mean, LA Guns delivers the goods no matter what they do, and it's Tracy and Phil, so you have a degree of authentic there. And actually, a childhood friend of mine's playing drums for him. The Duncan brothers for on the other side of Glendale, California.
Yep.
Jeff guitar
right?
player. Say what?
It's Sean, right?
Yeah, Sean's the drummer. Yeah, Jeff was the guitar player brother, and Matt was the bass player brother. And why am I going to go? I'm going to go because it'll be good. Tom Kiefer never disappoints, right? The guy can sing, and every one of those shows that I go to, like even when I went and saw Whitesnake years ago I saw him at the Marquee Theater, which was amazing. They played that small place, but there were kids there. There were teenagers. There were people in their 20s with Whitesnake shirts. I mean, I saw a girl that couldn't have been.
I took my two kids to Whitesnake.
Yeah, so you go and you're like, there's. I think any band, and this will go when we're old, and they'll keep. Let's face it, Soundgarden, all these bands had something to do. I mean, Soundgarden was my favorite of that era of bands. There will be people that are teenagers when we're all 80 years old that'll be listening to Soundgarden, and it's. People listen to Led Zeppelin that weren't born when Led Zeppelin released albums, because Led Zeppelin had something. Black Sabbath. I mean, Black Sabbath, Iron Man, and it's the theme song to a movie. And, AC/DC, with all the songs that are in those movies. And kids are identifying with that because it's good. I mean, this makes me sound really old, but I mean, I can listen back to things that before my era, and I can recognize they were good and enjoy listening to them. I can listen to a Tom Jones song, And Tom Jones is a blast, right? I can listen to Sinatra, and yeah, it's good. I can listen to Elvis. It's good stuff, and it will continue to survive because the Beatles. I mean, let's face it, the Beatles. Nobody has a catalog greater than the Beatles, and there's people that are, I mean, 16 years old that they put their Beatles shirt on and they're screaming out Beatles songs because they love them. There will be people that will identify with music from the 60s, 70s, or 80s, as we're talking about, that will identify that weren't born till 2000, and it strikes a chord with them because if it's genuine, if it's really authentic music, it's people are going to identify at any point, and there will be people that aren't born yet. They're going to listen to "Shout at the Devil," and that that 12-year-old kid's going to have his fist in the air, shout, shout. He's going to go for it because he identifies with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, good music just transcends time. I mean,
Yes,
there's always been shitty stuff out there. It just gets forgotten over time. I mean, good stuff is what transcends over time. And definitely, yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment. And
and people will.
my
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying people will. There is something to everybody. It's it's you listen to some old Rolling Stone stuff and you identify. You just do. And how do whether it's me or you're almost you're more than half. You're half my age, let's say, and you identify with stuff that these bands broke up before you were born, and you're able to identify because some of it's really good. I mean, one of the unsung heroes of the era, Shotgun Messiah. I mean, oh my God, a couple of those songs are just rip your face off. Great songs. Heartbreak Boulevard and I Don't Care About Nothing. I Don't Care About Nothing. Come on. How many people that are 20 years old can blast that? There's a lot that can identify, and they will. And, that's
it's a great song. It's a great band. Yeah.
And it is cool to see now, to where back then it wasn't an easy thing for the grunge era or the metal era to coexist. Now it all everybody's into it both. It's like they can coexist now.
Well, they do, because the best of it stayed there. Yeah. The pulp kind of gets forgotten, and there's people that identify with some song that was a little tiny, was on MTV for 3 weeks kind of thing, and there'll be people that identify with that too. But overall, you listen back and you're listening to Soundgarden, but you can listen to Motley Crue because you get the best of it, or you can listen to Def Leppard, right? I mean, that's something that people can listen to and they can still appreciate things that have come up through the years. I mean, why would I like Black Country Communion? Well, some great players in there. Why a guy my age? I wasn't even old enough to recognize what Deep Purple was when Machine Head came out. I mean, I wasn't really buying anything substantial. I was probably listening to Glenn Campbell or something, because I had older parents. And but Machine Head is one of my favorite albums, and it came out in like '73, I think. So I was like 8, 9 years old when it came out, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, some of my favorite songs are classic songs, like "Hush" is a great song. I love "Don't Fear the Reaper" by Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah,
these are I'm 49 years old, so a lot of these songs were I know those two particular were before I was born.
And there's never enough cowbell.
Never.
There's never enough cowbell.
Never.
But Hush. I mean, but listen to Machine Head. Everything's awesome. The best screen rock. Highway Star. The intro to that is amazing. And then you go 10 years later or 15 years later, and you got Monkey Business, and Sebastian Bach delivers the goods. He killed it on that song. It came out. It was almost like, damn. Don't give the guy my address. He might come and take my face off of that screen. I mean,
yeah. Amazing.
Okay, so Jim, before we end the episode, do you remember any other funny, good, interesting stories from back in the day?
I mean, there's so many. I mean, I think the statute of limitations is passed. All right, leaving you one that was funny, and it's funny because of the way it occurred. There was after hours, people would go to Denny's or a place called Ben Frank's, and it was further down the strip. So one night I go there and I'm waiting for some friends to show up, and Nikki Sixx goes there, and we're standing across from each other, and we're not buddies, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it was friendly, but hey, whatever. We're kind of just waiting for people, and this guy from Flock of Seagulls and his friends pull up on Vespas. And, I mean, Sixx has got like some massive Harley. I mean, I could only wish that I owned a Harley at that point. I had a 74 Firebird, right? But the guy pulls up with his friends on a Vespa, a little moped. And, let's face it, the cool factor for mopeds was not there. And he basically, I mean, he kind of looked at me like I'm nobody because I'm nobody. And he looks at Sixx and he kind of sneers at him and he walks past him. Now, Sixx is a sizable guy. So am I. And he walks past and he and I looked at each other and we both looked at the guy's moped. We didn't say a word. I mean, I know he was probably high as a kite, but no word was said. And we took the moped and we shoved it behind the dumpster. Right? And then our friends showed up and we went to our separate tables and whatever, right? But that guy had to call in that his Vespa was stolen because there was no way he knew we got it in the dumpster, right? But it was like great minds think alike. Like this guy has to be taught a lesson. And it was like, there you go. It's
and that's when he wrote, "I ran so far away."
His Vespa was gone.
He had to run home. That would have been fun to say, you're going to run far away this time, buddy.
You and Nikki made that guy's career.
Yeah. But it was funny because, I mean, like I said, we weren't pals or anything. We just, he knew me, but he didn't know me. And that was even before Virgin, which really Riki had a good relationship with those guys. But it was his relationship, really. But there was things like that, or there was a guy, and I don't want to even give him his name up because I don't want to give the guy any glory, but he basically hit this girl in front of me. And I don't really do well with that. I've never done well with that. And so I had him on the ground in a chokehold in a second. I mean, I was pissed. And he was kicking and screaming and he was going to kick my ass. And I'm kind of laughing because it's like, really? Because I could break your neck, right? And I'm like, you're going to calm down, dude. Oh, okay. And it started to release and he wouldn't calm down. So I choked him out. And I stood over him, I was over him and he comes to and he starts arguing again, throwing his elbow at me, and I choke him out again. And this went on for a little while. It was dangerous at this point. And my best buddy was in this band Creature. And he's standing next to me. He's, dude, you're going to kill him. I'm like, no, I think he's going to be good this time. And it's like, okay, do you want to go back to sleep or do you want to, oh, okay. It was like, he gets up and you're looking at him going, I really wish you didn't hit girls in front of me. I don't like that. But it was just funny because at the time, people stood around and they weren't videotaping it. They were kind of egging me on a little bit. But it was like, nope, don't join in the thing. Don't beat people up. It was still a community of sorts. And it was just funny. It was a thing where you look back and Trix and I, when we get together, we tell that story every single time and we can't stop laughing because how ridiculous it was. Or like I was sitting there with these guys across from the Troubadour and this guy, Johnny, had a bunch of pot on him. And I'm sitting there and I'm literally like on the hood of my car and there's all these girls there. And I don't even know why I'm across the street with them from the Troubadour. Maybe waiting for some, I can't remember why, but it was Trix's drummer. And these cops show up and they start giving everybody crap. And the guy kind of looks at me and the cop leaves me alone. He's like, all right, which one of you has been smoking pot? Because he can smell it. And Johnny's not trying to take credit for it. Back then, pot was a big deal. And I remember, he's sitting there and he starts going through it and he gets the pot out of Johnny's pocket. And Johnny's mortified. And he puts it on the ground and the cop just stomps it into dust, right? And he's like, he goes, I'm not just going to bother writing this up. Johnny's got that was my pot. He's got tears in his eyes. The cop looks at me and I'm like, hey, whatever, I don't care, right? But it's funny because he's like got tears in it. That was my pot, man.
So
I mean,
sad.
there's,
Wow.
I mean, I'm going to try and keep it PG-13, but there was just so many funny things there, like uh, Poison when they had to. It was right after I think they replaced Matt with Cece, but my roommate had an ad out for a drummer, and this guy calls up, and we know who it is from the voicemail back, or the not voicemail, but the tape recording, because he used to have a tape answering machine. And the guy calls up again, leaves another one. And I'm like, God, I know this idiot. He's this little dude. He'd literally say he was, but it was more handsome than Jesus. He used to say. It was really weird. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to call him back and just run him through the ringer. And I give him this whole thing. Well, we're 6'9" on the average, and we're this. And I'm trying to give him every reason to stop calling. And I'm pretty sure I'm just trolling them the whole time. And I'm like, all right, well, we're so cool that we have roadies that look like they're in Poison. So when you get to us, you'll know we're the real deal. But you're gonna have to come down, and we're business, man. You're gonna have to come down at 7 a.m. I just bring your snare. You don't have to bring your whole kit. I want your snare, and I want to show how dedicated. You're gonna walk in there, and you're gonna smack that snare so hard that we know you want this gig. You got to fight past the roadies to get this gig, right? And this idiot takes the bait. And I'm like, oh, crap, what am I going to do? I'm like, I know. And I'm like, okay. And it was like Washington Boulevard or some Poison's rehearsal place where they live. I mean, Tuesday, 7 a.m. This is the address. Don't be late. I want to see you with a snaring hand. These guys are going to tell you that you're not wanted. We don't need a drummer. We don't like drummers that get lost. You don't know what you're doing. You need to fight for this gig. This guy gets his way into the rehearsal studio at 7 a.m. and he's just smacking that snare. He's going at it, and they don't know what to do. And pretty soon, Ricky's looking at Bob, going, "Are you guys trying to replace me?" I mean, this whole thing, right? And this goes on for a while till he finally figures out that somebody trolled him. And we're like, "Oh man, I wonder how this turned out." And I get home, and they're on my voicemail. Jim, it's Bob. I'm going to kill you. So he knew it was me, right? At that point, he was calling my roommate's phone. And it was just brilliant because to this day, they tell that story, and those guys are laughing their ass off because this guy's just smacking that stuff. I want in the gig. I want the gig. I want the gig the whole time.
That's amazing.
Oh, it was so funny. And that guy, when he saw me, the next time he saw me on strip, he's like, "You're an asshole." And I'm like, "Yes, I am. And I'm a really funny asshole."
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of stuff like that. And if you get a chance to interview Riki, Riki's got great stories from an entire era. I mean, you got to give him his due there. I still talk to some people to this day, and there's just a lot of fun there. I could keep you on this thing for hours, and you've got better things to do than to talk to me for hours. But that scene was a blast. It really was, and no regrets. Virgin had his thing with Virgin Music. It didn't pan out. China had offers, didn't pan out. And you look back and it's like, you're not, I survived it. I've got stories to tell. I enjoyed it. And it was a very destructive thing too, for people that couldn't handle that. Cause you can see some people that definitely aren't doing so well, but there's other really well-balanced people out there that do this. Like if you look at somebody like Riki Rocket, Ricky's having a great time with his life. He does his stuff. I talk to him once in a while. He's a good man, and he got through it, and he got to do his whole thing. And he's got, certainly some scars to bear, as everybody would. But talk about a guy that's
and now Jim Gillette wants to kick his ass.
Oh, I know. There's a whole story there too. And Jim Gillette's one of the few guys that I would have given, a second pause to back in the day, because Jim's always been a tough guy. Now he's unstoppable. He's a beast. But Jim, and I don't want to get into who's right or wrong or whatever. I think it's unfortunate that that happened between the two of them. It was unnecessary. But
Absolutely.
I got to say, Jim Gillette really stepped up as being a father with those two boys. And he raised those two boys after that divorce, and he's done a good job. And he's a good guy. And it's unfortunate that things online, there was basically a challenge that I don't think Riki really meant the way that it came off. It's the magic of the internet, and it blew up. And it's unfortunate because
it definitely blew up.
Yeah, and Rocket's a good guy. He is, and I think that if Rocket had if he had known the situation, he probably wouldn't have said a word. Probably wouldn't have said a word to Gillette about it. I mean, poor Howie Huberman in the middle of that whole thing, right? I mean, and it was on his Facebook thing, and Howie was, Poison's manager. He was Nitro's manager. He was my boss at Guitars R Us. And I love Howie to the end. I learned a lot of things to do and not to do from Howie. And unfortunately, he's very sick. And, he hasn't returned my last couple of calls, which is never, Howie and I are still close after all these years. And it's never feels good when somebody is sick doesn't call you back, because it makes you think that they don't want to talk about it. And, and I wish that I won't say a word to Rocket about his thing with Gillette, because I don't want Riki to think I'm attacking him. But I really wish that they could take this back into context and look and go, guys, we're all, Gillette's probably 58-ish. Riki's probably 62. No, Riki's probably 61. We're old enough, the joke is I can solve all my problems with my fists. The reality is you never prove anybody right just because you kick the crap out of them.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they may have squashed it. Who knows? I haven't heard anything online. It seemed to kind of die. So
I hope
hopefully, maybe they took care of it behind closed doors.
I know it was bothering Howie to no end, because Howie was in the hospital at the time, and Howie loves both those guys. He does. He has way too much history and way too much love for both those guys to be stuck in the middle of that. And people were saying some horrible things about Rocket that were absolutely untrue. And Howie couldn't get him off his Facebook fast enough. He'd log into Facebook, remove the comment, because it wasn't appropriate for people to be saying what they were saying about Rocket at that point.
And people don't know. People just want to run their mouths. They just get on there and say whatever.
Internet warriors. You sit behind the keyboard, you're able to touch the keyboard, and there's no repercussions. Mike Tyson said, everybody's tough and has a plan until they get punched in the face. Right?
Yeah.
That's the reality. Some people say stuff, there's no consequences. You get punched in the face, there's a consequence, right? Leave it for Mike Tyson to come up with that nugget of knowledge. Another guy, if you guys have an opportunity to talk to, is Howie. Howie is going to have stories for days.
And
I can put you in touch with Howie. He's if he's up for taking calls right now. I know he's sick, but he's up for it. Howie's fun. He's one of those people that you have people in your lives that leave you with certain impressions, whether they be mentors or friends or whatever. But Howie's one of those guys that stayed with me. I first met Howie, I was probably 16 years old. And then here I am, 40 years later, and I'm still friends with him. And his partner, Albert. I talked to Albert just the other day, and they're not in business together anymore. But, I talked to these guys, and they have stories. And Howie with Guitars R Us, we came across everybody. Whether you could go from Slash to Dwight Yoakam to Bruce Springsteen, and there's tons of stories there. You're just like, wow, John Frusciante coming in so high, he was dropping $100 bills on the floor. I couldn't pick his money up fast enough to give it back to him. And he pays cash for a 63 Strat, doesn't even wait for the case, and walks down and flags down a bus. It was the wildest thing you've ever seen. Albert and I are looking at each other like, what the hell just happened here? You know what I'm saying? Wow. He flagged down a bus, and he had a fistful of $100 bills, and he stuck them into the bus thing where you normally throw change. It was like in the middle of Sunset Boulevard, he stopped the bus. that was pretty wild. I'm sure he came back. I don't remember if he came back and got the case when he sobered up, but there was wild
Wow.
things in there, and it was fun stuff, and some lifelong friends and people you miss. Like, let's say Robin Crosby became a very good friend of mine. I had met him when I was 15 or something, and we did some good horse trading on guitars and amps, and through the years became very good friends. And to watch him pass as a side effect of drugs, that's what it was. I mean, he developed AIDS through sharing needles, and he passed from an accidental overdose, I guess. Obviously got out of the hospital because he was able to live outside of the hospital for a while, and didn't take long for him to check out. And I remember the last time I talked to him, he goes, "Man, they used to call me the king, and I don't even have furniture."
Wow.
Right.
I understand. I mean, and really, he was a guy with a massive, massive heart. He was fun. He cared about people. He didn't like seeing people argue, and I think that's what drove him to that with Rat, because he was the spirit of that band, and you couldn't ask for a truer guy. And I remember he came in once and he had bought a Ferrari. And he was like, let's go to Las Vegas tonight. And I'm looking at him like, what? He goes, yeah, let's drive to Vegas. We'll get there in like 3 hours, right? And I'm like, I am not getting in a car with you, high and drunk, and doing 120 miles an hour. Yeah, it was not a good. I'm glad that was a good choice I made. But I mean, he wanted to be friends. He'd go with Max or any of those guys, and just nobody ever had a bad word to say about him. I'm sure when he got high, he did some stuff he shouldn't have, but he was a good person. And it's sad that he had the world by the tail. I mean, he multi-million albums, lived up on Laurel Canyon, had a Playboy Playmate for a wife, had a Jaguar, a Ferrari, and a Volkswagen Thing. I could never figure that one out. He liked the Volkswagen Thing from the surfing days or something. But he had it all, and he lost it all. And it was a shame. That would be, watching the demise of the King would be a good story in itself, because that was a good guy. That was just a flat out good guy.
Yeah, he was always somebody that he always seemed so big, like so.
Oh, he was big, dude. I mean, when
I was just like, wow, this guy's awesome.
Right. His friends called him king, and my friends called me king, but I'm standing next to him, and let's say he was like 6'5". So, I'm looking, and it's like, he's one of the few people that made me feel small. You know what I'm saying? It was like, wow, I feel tiny next to him. And it was like, okay, he can be king when I'm in his presence, because I'm not big. He's too big. But he wrote cool songs. He had a great personality. He was funny. He had a great laugh. I called him up once when I moved to Arizona, and I owned my club, and I was calling because a mutual friend said, "Hey, call him and just talk to him. He's not doing well." And he was high, and I called up. He was high, and he was drunk, and he was losing his house. And I'm like, "Hey, Robin, not for nothing, but I know your friends are willing to help you get into rehab, and we need to talk. I mean, I'm here for you. You want me to come out? I mean, I know, your friends that have money can pay for it, but people want to see you around." And you could hear the doorbell ring. And all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, it's Jehovah's Witnesses. Hold on. I got to take my clothes off." Right. And he could hear him. He strips all his clothes off, and he opens the door. "May I help you?" So imagine, he got 65 models standing there buck naked in front of Jehovah's Witnesses. "May I help you?" And you can hear some commotion in the door. And he just starts laughing. He goes, "Yeah, I had to strip down for him." It's like, man, you're insane.
Wow.
It was awesome. Funny. Yeah, it was funny. And, it was funny to see he lost his dog, Rose. Somebody took his dog, and his dog's name was Rosie. And he was crying. I mean, he loved his dog. He said, "My dog's been my most faithful companion. I love Rosie, and she's gone. Somebody just took her. It's not that she got hit in the street. It's not what, somebody just took his dog out of his car. Gone." Wow. That hearing a big, strong man with that heart, and hearing the tears, just that was a tough conversation, man. That wasn't fun, and again, it all goes back to making a wrong choice.
Yeah.
lots of people did it. I was very glad I made different choices. To be
I
sitting
mean,
here laughing with
yeah.
you, great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it goes to show that you can basically have it all, and but your inner demons are gonna catch up with you eventually if you don't
Yep.
deal with that
Yeah,
somehow. Yeah,
well,
Mhm.
absolutely. And the
yeah,
sad thing is some people can keep it under control. I mean, you never hear of Ricky Rocket having a coke problem, right? You know what I'm saying? You don't hear about that, but other people do. You hear Steven Tyler wasted all the fortune from the original era of Aerosmith, and he had nothing, literally
yeah.
nothing.
Well,
He had to sell guitars to live, and
well,
then
Janie Lane, as well. I mean,
Well,
there's
Janie
tons of
Lane was
stories.
here flipping burgers at a Billy Moore's club here, the Hi-Fi.
really,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, which was a
And he
shame.
and yeah,
The the
it was crazy.
Janie had talent. He was in a band called Plain Jane before Warren.
Jane, yeah, in Florida, yeah.
Yeah, and they were out in L.A. They moved out to
Yeah,
L.A.
they
And Vicky Hamilton was trying to get Clark. China had just fallen apart, and so she wanted me to play with Jane. I want to put you two together and see what happens. And I thought, the stuff they were doing was pretty wimpy, so I didn't want to deal with it because I was coming out of something that was a much more aggressive, not metal band, but a angst-driven band. But
yeah.
I'm listening to the songs the guy wrote, and I'm like, I'll be damned if he's not really good. And the guy can sing, and you know, uh, you knew he had something, and then
Mhm.
you just got that right chemistry when he replaced Adam in Warrant, and then what was it? Uh, how did that go? Who was the guitar? Josh Lewis was the guitar
Josh
player.
Lewis, yeah.
Mm.
Joey Allen replaced, and Joey's a fun guy. He helped me get my stuff with BC Rich back in the day. Um,
Mhm.
but there was that chemistry. Those
Mhm.
5 minutes together, even though it was the Janie Lane show in so many ways, it was that chemistry of those people together that worked to help them sell, millions of albums. Rat,
Yeah.
the same thing. I mean, you got before Warren, you had people like Jakey Lee, and I think George Lynch played a few gigs with them, and
I
uh,
thought Don Dokken did too as a guitarist.
he might have.
Early.
Don Dawkins not a slouch on guitar. Trust me, he's no. I
Oh
saw
yeah. Oh,
Don
yeah.
Dawkins play guitar. I think it was Igniter, and it was like, damn, he can play, right?
Yeah.
And that was, I must have been 15, and the there was a host of guitar players through that band, and
Mhm.
none of them were slouches. But once that kid from San Diego, where they were from initially, they weren't L.A. boys, but they
Mhm.
brought Warren up there, and it just boom, it happened. And in fact, the first recordings are Joey Cristofilano on bass, not who was in Dawkins for a minute also, recorded Dawkins' first thing, and they replaced him with Juan, and that chemistry with Juan is what made that really happen. It's
Mhm.
really what made it happen. And not that Joey was bad, because Joey's a great bass player. I only met him a few times. I don't know him, but it was chemistry. It was those
Mhm.
5 guys, and once you saw uh, Robin start to check out, especially by that fifth album with Way Cool Jr., chemistry was gone. After that, nothing. Shame, chemistry. Jagger
Yeah,
and
that's
Richards, without each other, they are nothing. Perry
hmm.
and Tyler, without each other, they are nothing. Not that any of those guys rose to that level, but you know what I'm saying. Lennon
Yeah.
and McCartney. I mean, McCartney's the talent. Lennon's a talent, but they still aren't the Beatles. You know.
I mean, sure, yeah. It's. I mean, there's tons of examples. I mean, Sebastian Bach has a great career after Skid Row, but it's not Skid Row. And
No.
same goes to the
And to
rest
show
of the
you how
guys.
small this world is, his guitar player is Brent Woods, who was in Wildside.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
Brent and I have known each other since we were 14 years old. In fact, I texted him earlier today just because I heard the new Skid Row single, or not Skid Row, the new Sebastian Bach single. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Hmm.
I'm like, is this you? Because it sounds a little bit like a Motley Crue single, but uh, it's good stuff. Small world. We grew up in the same. It's not because I'm traveling the world meeting millions of people. It's because I grew up in a small area where everybody was. And if you look at the stuff from the 60s, to realize that Page and Blackmore and Beck and Clapton all grew up almost walking distance from each other,
Yeah, it's insane.
literally that close. I mean, a bike ride away, a 10-minute car ride, something. But they were all in a real tight area, and they all knew each other. And it's wild to think, and it's not like it was in the water, but it just happened to coalesce in a certain area. And let's face it. I mean, the best guitar player in history is Richie Blackmore. You just ask him, and he'll tell you. But that area, and that's what the Strip was, and
Yeah.
Seattle had that, with that group of people. Seattle had this group that all of a sudden, bam, the small group of guys went on to rule the world for 7 years. So
Yeah.
anyhow, I'm as I digress and suck up your night.
No,
Um,
I mean, I feel like
you
we
have
could
to
talk
wrap
for
up, man.
hours. We probably have at this point, but
We did start a little late, so we're good.
yeah, we're fine.
We're good.
So Jim, yeah. So in that sense, in a similar way, so what? Let's wrap it up with a question that we always ask our guests. Which 5 albums would you take to a desert island?
Oh wow. Well, Machine Head by Deep Purple, without question. Van
Mm-hmm.
Halen 1, without question. Aerosmith Rocks, without question. Oh, hold on. Yeah, because there's a whole bunch that I love, but Back in Black, AC/DC. It's a toss up between that and Highway to Hell, but I'll go Back in Black. Um, hmm, um, uh, it's going to be tough. It
Any
might be.
Kiss?
You know what? I think I'm going to take Heaven and Hell by Sabbath over Kiss.
Okay.
I think I'm going to take that over Kiss, as much as that is. I mean, there's stuff there, but I mean, there's so many albums that are so awesome, you
Yeah.
know,
Mm.
and I'm sure that those 5 albums will change if you ask me tomorrow. But but definitely, I mean, Machine Head is just just it set a tone for
Yeah.
forever, and
Hmm.
Heaven and Hell was such an awesome album. To be Black Sabbath without Ozzy and do something that awesome, it was just awesome. I remember it came out and it was like,
Yeah.
wow, they're huge. They said it's Dio who Rainbow, Long Live Rock and Roll was one of my favorite albums. Just is. It's actually my favorite Rainbow album. And then Down to Earth after that with Graham Bonnet singing. I love that album. I know that it's a pariah to so many Blackmore enthusiasts, but boy, Graham Bonnet's voice, and he's still killing it today. That guy, he might be 104. I don't know, but he's certainly a nice guy. I finally got to meet him and talk to him on the phone a few times because he's dating a friend of mine. And uh, Since You've Been Gone is just such a perfect rock song. And all the songs on that album that Blackmore actually wrote, the other ones, they're great. Lost in Hollywood, all that stuff. It's a great album. But I think I'm going to stick with those 5 for now. How's that?
But I mean, yeah, I totally agree with all of those. And yeah, I mean, I've been rediscovering Dio lately. There's a lot of stuff that I haven't heard. I realized, and I've been going through the albums. I've been um, what's a song I heard the other day? Hungry for Heaven. Such a
Right.
good song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I actually discovered it as a cover song by another band that did it, and then I said, "No, this is a Dio song." Oh, really? And I want to check it out. And yeah, I mean, it's there's his output. I mean, it's just so much stuff that he
He did
did.
something really interesting that I
Mhm.
don't think anybody had really done up to that point. Is that when he was in Rainbow, they were obviously searching for a big single again, whether it's Long Live Rock and Roll or Man on the Silver Mountain or any of those things.
Mhm.
Sabbath obviously had some singles, whether it was Mob Rules or Heaven and Hell or whatever, Neon Nights. But when he did Dio, it's like he wasn't trying to do a single. He had them, but it's like his whole thing was just a whole album of that. It was like It's not that the album was a concept album, but the album itself, it was different. It wasn't. He wasn't pushing for a single. He was pushing for an album.
Right.
And I think that Dio really, you listen to real Dio fans. I mean, you can play deep cuts and they're just as into him as they are to whatever, any song that he released. So, and the man's voice was magnificent. I mean, just that little tiny man with that massive power. I mean, I don't think he's as big as my left lung, and he could get that out.
Yeah, he definitely had a powerful voice.
Yeah, he was
and,
awesome.
and an amazing presence on the stage.
Yeah,
but off the stage, very quiet, very.
And I had met him several times during the 80s, like just met him, didn't talk to him much. But when he played my club, I have never seen a more humble man. I came in and my wife wanted an autograph because she was like, I'd like to get Ronnie James Dio autograph. So I came in and I'm like, hey, would you mind if autographing this for my wife? And he said, well, of course not. He sits down, he goes, did we sound good tonight? I'm like, well, yeah. He goes, I mean, but really, I mean, just don't say that. I mean, did you feel that? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he goes, I really enjoyed your club. Your staff's really nice. Blah, blah. He's calling people by their names, right? Not, hey, you. And he's like, well, do you think you would have us back? And I'm looking at him like, well, you sold the room out and you were great. And of course I'd have you back. And, and he's like, well, I mean, did you like it? And I'm like, Ronnie, I've been a fan since you were in Rainbow. I mean, Long Live Rock and Roll, it's like, it was the theme song to my teens, right? And he's like, oh my God, that means so much to me, and it was like, I think he was very humble. I think that he really, when people said what he did meant something to them, I think that he really enjoyed that. I think it meant something to him to hear that. He was just a good guy, I mean, the only person that ever has anything bad to say about him is, I think, Vivian Campbell. And I certainly don't know between them. But everybody else I knew, and I'll leave you with a story from Howie. We had a friend named Bobby Donati. He produced the China demos, right? And he overproduced them. But, but Bobby was very talented. He was in Lita Ford's band for a while. He was in Leif Garrett's band for a while. Bobby could sing and play like nobody's business. And he did but he could also emulate other people. So he recorded on his home studio, Dio Does Christmas, right? And so, night, the whole thing. And he just belted them out like Dio. And he recorded all these Christmas songs. And these songs made the rounds with record executives, where they started calling up saying, we want to do something with this guy, right? Because his songs were, the Dio imitation was so fun. And Bobby passed from a rare blood cancer. And he was very protective about it. He didn't want people to know he was sick, but we all knew he was sick. And so instead of a regular service, he wanted everybody to get together at his favorite bar, a pub on Ventura Boulevard. And so all of us go there. And let's say this is 1992. I can't remember what year it was. But we all go to Bobby's service. And we're telling Bobby stories, and Howie is telling the story about this demo. And who walks in but Ronnie James Dio? It was almost like Bobby called to us from the grave, bringing Dio in.
Right.
Like, is that Ronnie James? I didn't know he knew Bobby, because he doesn't know Bobby, right? It was just a coincidence. Wow. And it's like, oh, he was the guy that did that. That was great. He knew about it, and he had a story to tell about it to Howie. It was just small world stuff. But Dio, humble, talent, just talent.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And every one of his guitar players could smoke me, so I don't have anything to say about
it. So before we go, have you ever considered playing again after you?
Almost every day. I still play. I don't even know how many guitars I own. But no, who wants to see me play whatever? No one. Certainly, if there was, I'd be flattered. That's for certain. certainly if there was something that would be fun, but there's so few from then. Half of China is dead. Really, there were of Virgin really being the only thing. The important missing piece would be Riki. If Riki wanted to, it's the bass player is dead, and Ronnie was what made that band really come together, because he was such an amazing bass player. He made me play better. He made me better. He made me rethink it from a punk approach to a musical approach, and he did a great job doing that. He really lifted the game for me. And then you got to talk Steve into wanting to do it, and Steve's still mad at Riki. They don't talk. So I don't think there's much opportunity there, but certainly it would be fun, even if you went up and jammed The Wanderer and Jailbreak by Thin Lizzy. It would be funny. It would be enjoyable, but it's I just don't think there's a market for it. And if you ever talked, I've never brought it up to Riki in all these years. I hadn't seen him in years. I bumped him at the NAMM show, and it was just great to give him a hug and see how happy he is. He's sober, he's happy, he's married, and he's got a career again, and he's doing this tour, and God bless him. I mean, he's kind of representing our era a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
and
He's a
I
big part of it. Yeah.
yeah, and I have an all new heightened appreciation for Riki after all these years, and a lot of respect for what he's doing. It's not easy to go out there. Me, I could hide behind a guitar, and that's why I never, when Steve fired Riki, they wanted me to sing, and I didn't want to sing because I can. I just didn't feel like I was Paul Stanley, and I never felt that. But to be able to go up and not only just sing, but to go up to tell a story, to go up and tell your life story or your experiences, it's a different kind of courage, and I respect him a lot. And I hope my friendship with Riki continues to grow over the years, because we didn't talk for quite a while. I think until Ronnie died, and I mean, I know we went out and got coffee and buried the hatchet, a couple years after Steve fired him. But now, I mean, I'm excited to see what he does next, and I'm really excited to see he's happy. He's got a wife that he is absolutely passionately in love with, and that's awesome to see for him, because he made some bad choices along the way. One of them cost him his whole radio career for a while. And this one is 100% supportive, and they are a team, and he seems super happy. So I'm happy for him in that way.
Nice. Well, Jim, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you here. It's been so much fun. I mean, I feel like you have stories for days, and I would
have some that I don't want recorded. Trust me.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. And
thank you for reaching out, man. I mean, this is fun. I got a couple hours of good laughs that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. So the episode will go out. I want to upload it before the end of the year. So I will do that between next week and probably next week. I will put the episode out, and then I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's gonna go onto the documentary as well.
Sure. If you need anything from me, I'm more than willing to share it with you. I don't have the originals of anything we recorded, sadly. But there's some decent copies on YouTube, I guess. But use anything you want. If you want me to put you in touch with more people like KK, Tricks from Creature is a good one. Anybody, if you think of anybody that you think I might know, I'll put you in touch with them so you can have more for your documentary.
Awesome, man.
Cool.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, we'll definitely be keeping in touch. I'll let you know once the episode's out, and yeah, we'll keep in touch. So again, have a great evening, and thank you so much.
Hey, thank you guys for taking time with me. I had a blast.
Thank you, Jim. It was
All
awesome
right, kid.
talking to you and meeting you and hearing your
Yeah.
stories.
Anytime you're stuck out in the million acre cat box, look me up.
Will do.
Right.
All
Yeah,
right. Take care, Jim.
and have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Absolutely. My daughter comes home Friday. My son's out there probably eating a steak on me right now, but he's
Nice.
he's probably eating my dinner, and we'll catch up.
Yeah. Take care, man.
Awesome, man.
Take care. Bye
Thank
bye.